Psych! This isn't Star Wars, this is the Odyssey. The Odyssey is a story about a man's journey to return home after being in the Trojan War. Our man's name is Odysseus, and this is his journey, right? So he's ended his war in Troy, and he is hoping to return home to Ithaca. However, that journey does not go as planned, clearly, since he goes everywhere else but where he is supposed to go. Why does he go that way? I'll tell you. Before that, though, you must know that this is an epic poem. What is an epic? It's a long narrative poem that relates the great deeds of a larger-than-life hero who embodies the values of a particular society. This is what you need to focus on. Everything that Odysseus does and says, his flaws, all of these things are what the Greeks are representative of, what the Greeks would have valued. Okay, so think about Captain America for us. Is he a representative of what Americans value? Honesty, purity, like integrity, something that, working hard, being the underdog. Sometimes I feel like I've not watched Captain America, don't hate me, but I think that's pretty relevant. Okay, some other examples of epics are Beowulf or the Iliad, which comes before the Odyssey, and sometimes these are referred to as heroic poems. Epics often concern eternal human problems, such as the conflict between good and evil, written or told on a grand scale and often in ceremonial style. Why would someone tell these stories instead of writing them? Well, because forever we only had the oral tradition, right? So people didn't write down stories. It took a long time before they finally did, and this is one of the first ones that was ever written down. People, however, would tell these stories verbally instead. Okay, so when you think about poems typically are easier to remember. They have a certain flow, a certain rhythm. They have some rhymes, okay? They have key phrases repeated. That is why this is a poem. Epic heroes, who are our main big dudes, i.e. Odysseus in this book, are people who usually undertake a quest or a journey to achieve something of great value to themselves or society. Hence why I had the Star Wars theme playing. Or Harry Potter would be a good explanation. Or the SpongeBob movie, if any of you have seen that. That is everyone's favorite comparison. So their hope is to achieve something of great value to themselves or society. They're introduced in the middle of turmoil, and this is a literary term, you should write it down, in medias res. It means introduced in the middle of turmoil. Essentially, when the book starts, when we start reading the Odyssey, he is almost home. So everything that happens after that is a flashback. He tells us how he's ended up where he is, and then at a certain part, we meet back up where he is, and then we get to see if he returns home or not. These epic heroes also have some sort of flaw that haunts them and many times almost brings upon their downfall, all right? So what would this be for Odysseus? I'm not going to tell you quite yet, but I'd be interested to see what you guys think is Luke Skywalker's or Anakin Skywalker's or Harry Potter's or Percy Jackson. Okay, the list goes on. The poem is credited to Homer, who is blind, potentially. We don't know because obviously we weren't alive back then. He's a poet and thought to live around 1200 BCE. He wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. Okay, so the Iliad is specifically about the Trojan War. The Odyssey is about Odysseus' journey home after it. Odysseus was a big dog in the Trojan War, okay? So if you're familiar with anything related to that, you understand and probably know who he is already. And the story is about the wars between the Trojans and the Greeks, right? So the Iliad is the story of the Trojan War. It lasted 10 years. If you didn't know that, now you do. Troy was defeated when Ulysses, aka Odysseus, and his men were able to get inside the walls of Troy, concealed within the body of the Trojan horse. All right, this is your Trojan horse. Hopefully you guys know that story. If not, we'll talk more about it later. But it's pretty clever, right? We're sick of fighting. How do we trick the other side into thinking we're done? Well, by golly, let's give them a peace offering and hide inside so that when they celebrate and pass out and go to sleep, we can kill them in their sleep and take over their city and win the war. And that's how it happened. So then we pick up with the Odyssey, which is the story of Odysseus and his men trying to get home. It also takes them 10 years to get home. Okay, Odysseus is married. He has a son waiting for him back home. What do you think they've been doing? Okay. There's our cute little boat. This is the only time it goes directly where it's supposed to go. Our main characters are Odysseus, who is our epic hero. You also get introduced to sirens, who are a group of females who lure sailors by their singing. Sirens look different in different stories. Sometimes they're bird-like, sometimes they're mermaid-like. Okay, in this case, they're more bird-like and really kind of scary. Then you have Circe, who is a goddess enchantress, essentially a witch, right, who turns men into pigs. In some stories, she can turn men into any sorts of animals. Then you have Scylla, who's a monster with 12 feet, 6 heads, 3 rows of teeth, and carries off a sailor in each mouth. You can see why she would be dangerous. You also have Charybdis, who's a whirlpool. Essentially 3 times a day, she pulls giant boats into her whirlpool and kills lots of people. You have Hyperion, who is the sun, distinct from Apollo, the sun god. Then you have our main dude, Zeus, who is the leader of the gods. Eurylochus, who is one of the crew members. This is where it gets good. This is the stuff you need to write down, okay? These are terms that are going to come up throughout our reading, and they're going to help you understand really like what society valued with the Greeks. So you have this word nostos or nostos, a homecoming, okay? This is a word of Greek origin. So it's about retaining certain statuses and retaining your identity upon arrival. Giving into temptation along the way means failing. So if Odysseus wants to return home, he cannot give in to temptation. He must stay focused if he wants to return home. He's the king of Ithaca, right? So it's a big deal that he retains his status when he gets back. And that is important, right? So then you have Xenia, which is huge. And you guys are going to probably be familiar with this idea. It's guest friendship, right? The Greeks have this concept of hospitality where you have to be nice to essentially everyone. If someone shows up at your door, you're generous, courteous, you offer them food or drinks, someplace to sleep, especially strangers, people that are traveling. Why do we do this? Well, the Greek gods sometimes like to dress up and pretend to be humans and test your loyalty. And let's say an old beggar knocks on your door. You're like, no, go away, you stink. Then he comes back, knock, knock, 5 seconds later, and he's Zeus, and now you're smited by the gods, right? So you always want to be nice to the people. Then we have 2 more terms. Patronymics, or aka a patronym, is a component of a personal name based on the given name of one's father, grandfather, or an earlier male ancestor. Each is a means of conveying lineage. Okay, so patronymics has a huge role in Odysseus' son's story. We'll get to talk about him. We'll read parts of Odysseus' story, and then we'll also read what's going on back home. Telemachus is his son. He is a baby when Odysseus leaves. So it takes him 20 years to get back. By the time he comes back, we need to see, is Telemachus growing into his own? Is he becoming a man, a leader? What's it look like? And it's important that, he has that claim to the throne. Then you also have things that are called epic similes or Homeric similes, named after Homer. And it's a detailed comparison in the form of a simile that are many lines in length. Essentially, it's like a really long simile, probably like 8 lines long, okay? Then lastly, you have an epithet, which is an adjective or descriptive phrase expressing a quality, characteristic of the person or things mentioned. An example of this would be gray-eyed goddess Athena. So think about it like this. If this is a ceremonial type poem that people are reciting, they need key phrases, right? Another key phrase would be the great tactician. That is Odysseus, okay? I can't really remember what Telemachus is right now, but he has one. Odysseus' wife does. Athena plays a huge role in this. She is essentially Odysseus' godmother, right? So that's kind of cool. And that also helps us better understand how he is such a great strategist at war. Guys, this is my fave. I'm pumped. Can't wait to see how this goes. It'll be great.